Rest in peace. Posted by Gettiacia. I don't sleep much. Even as a kid, I would find myself up all night, which earned me more punishment than you can believe. By the time I was a teen, my parents had pretty much accepted the fact that I didn't have a regular sleep pattern. When I got to college, my lack of downtime turned out to be a blessing. Since I was typically up all night, I took up doing people's work assignments for cash. Hell, that and the weed I was growing off campus would have supported me till graduation. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. I was removed from campus and basically told not to come back. This was the start of a downward spiral that landed me living in my pal's basement. I had a shit job as a janitor in the filthiest place imaginable. No girlfriend, no prospects, and very little hope of anything good coming my way. Then, on a normal Tuesday night, I was down in my room watching television when an ad caught my attention. Do you have trouble sleeping? Do you wish you could close your eyes for just one moment and have peace? Well, we have the answer. Rest is just one call away. Now, there was nothing out of the ordinary about the commercial. It was fairly normal for an ad at 2 in the morning, but when the number flashed across the screen, I felt almost compelled to call, thinking I was having a moment. I put it out of my mind and went on with my night. I saw that commercial every night for the next 2 weeks, and each time I'd get a little closer to calling. It was another sleepless night, and as usual, I was watching television. For once I was dozing off when the commercial came on. The second it aired, I was wide awake. The soothing monotone voice rattled off the same old speech, and just before the number flashed on the screen, something different happened. The narrator paused, and even though there was no one on screen, I couldn't help but feel like he was looking at me. Pick up the phone and call. I'd see that ad a million times, and that part hadn't been there. I reached for the remote and for some reason ended up with my phone in my hand. I put it down and grabbed the remote in an attempt to turn off the television, but once again I was holding my phone and the remote was still on the table. The voice repeated, "Pick up the phone and call now." I know for a fact that lack of sleep can do strange things to your mind, but I'd never experienced anything like this. I put my phone down one last time, being sure to keep my eyes on it while I reached for the remote. Slowly picking it up, I attempted to press the power button, but nothing happened. I pressed it over and over, still nothing. I glanced down at it to be sure I was mashing the right button and nearly shit myself when I saw my phone in my hand. The numbers 888, 800, 2040 were on the screen. I was one press away from making the call. Jumping up from my seat, I threw my phone across the room, then ran upstairs to get Sam. It took some convincing to get him down there, and of course the ad wasn't on. As a matter of fact, the television wasn't even on. The remote was still on the table sitting right next to my phone, and I looked like a complete lunatic. He looked at the television, then turned his attention to me as he yawned. "Look dude, I know you have sleep issues, but I don't. I have to be up in 3 hours. I don't have time for this shit. I'm going back to bed." He stormed off, slamming the door as he made an exit. I stayed awake till sunrise, then tried to get some rest. I woke up in a rush. I was late for work. When I got there, my supervisor, Floyd, was standing out front waiting for me. Giving me an agitated look, he checked his watch. "You're 45 minutes late, Jake, but if you do me a solid, I'll let it slide." Normally, when Floyd asks for a favour, it involves making a trip to pick up some less than legal substances. This time was different. Pulling a time card from his back pocket, he smirked. "Austin called in, so I need someone to wax the floor in the main hall. You do that for me and I'll forget about you being late." I'd clean a truck stop shitter with a toothbrush before touching that buffer again, but I was in a jam and it was better than the alternative. I was just finishing up my normal checklist when my phone rang. It was my roommate Sam. "What up, bro? I'm going to be out of town for a couple of days. Do me a favour and look after Chico for me till I get back." Chico is his pet possum. The fucking thing creeps me out, but I told him I'd do it, then finished up. Waxing the floor added a couple of hours to my day, but it wasn't like I had any plans. When I got home, I discovered he'd neglected to tell me he'd left Chico roaming the house. I hate him and he hates me. I thought he'd be in his cage. Stepping through the door, my foot came down on something squishy, followed by the unmistakable smell of shit. I didn't see the little bastard, but I could hear him knocking stuff off shelves in the kitchen. Great. I didn't bother going to check it out. Sam's house, Sam's pet, Sam's problem. I took off my shoe and went to my room. Once I settled in, I played video games for a while and had a few drinks. After a few hours, I grabbed something to eat and put on a movie. Aside from the sound of Chico rampaging around the house, it was a normal night. As usual, the commercial came on, but this time I turned off the television and got on my laptop. I wasn't looking for anything specific. I was honestly just killing time till I felt tired enough to sleep. I don't remember leaving my door open, but I must have, because Chico made his way down and somehow turned the television back on. The screen came to life and I expected to see that ad, but it was in the middle of some random show. I almost smiled. Then Chico hissed at me and the show went to commercial. As if on cue, that monotone voice called out, "Do you have trouble sleeping?" Instead of rattling off the usual pitch, the screen glitched, repeating the same phrase over and over, distorting with each iteration, till it was garbled mashup of sound and flickering light. Since Chico was sitting on the remote, I wasn't about to reach for it. I stepped over to turn off the television. The moment I touched it, there was a loud pop and sparks exploded from the back of the set as a surge of electricity hit me. I literally flew across the room and slammed into the wall, then blacked out. I have no idea how long I was out. When I opened my eyes, Chico was sitting on my chest. He hissed and I swatted that little fucker, sending him flying towards the couch. He landed and scrambled away. I would have laughed, but I felt like my brain was on fire. Finally sitting up, I glanced over at the television. It was still on. It looked as if nothing had happened. Before I could process what I was seeing, I heard screams coming from outside. I was going to ignore it and focus on getting myself together, but as I struggled to get up, they got louder. When I was finally on my feet, I staggered upstairs to get a look. The moment I peeped out of the window, I wished I hadn't. The Winston family from up the block were running down the middle of the street. I didn't see the father or the oldest boy, but the mother and daughter were frantic. I watched them running and looked back for a second before I opened the front door and tried to wave them in. When they saw me, they headed in my direction. I couldn't see what they were running from, but it didn't matter. I couldn't stand by and do nothing. They were almost to my yard when I saw it. I had to do a double take to be sure I wasn't imagining things. A massive shape spilled out of the darkness behind them, with light reflecting yellow off its eyes. I yelled to them, hoping it would encourage them to move faster, but it didn't help. I don't know if it was an arm or a leg, but something with claws cut the woman in half. It happened so fast her legs were still going for a few seconds. Now screaming and slipping in her mother's blood, the girl fell. It was over the instant she hit the ground. Whatever that thing was, it snatched her up and bashed her against the concrete with a loud, wet thwack. Her bones shattered as her body burst on impact. I don't know why I hadn't closed the door. I was standing there staring at that thing, and for the life of me, I couldn't move. Its skin was slick with blood. In the dark, it was hard to tell what colour it was, but I could see a mane of tendrils that seemed to move independently from the thing itself. They were more like snakes than hair. I watched them grabbing slabs of quivering flesh from the ground till the creature noticed me. It snarled and lunged, snapping me out of my daze in time to slam the door shut, as if that would keep it out. Stumbling away from the door, I fully expected that thing to come crashing in at any second, but it never did. I was too terrified to look out of that window again. I could hear it out there pacing in the darkness, chewing on bones and growling. In my mind, calling the police made sense. I rushed to the phone and called the cops. Of course, they didn't believe me. An unimaginable thing just murdered 2 people, and I couldn't begin to give a realistic description. I wouldn't have believed myself if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes. I don't know how long I listened to that thing before it finally got quiet. Since it apparently wouldn't or couldn't come inside, I thought I might be safe till sunrise. Then I checked the time. Somehow it had been 2:22 AM for over an hour. Time wasn't changing. The sound of Chico rummaging through the kitchen nearly scared me to death. I couldn't control what was happening outside, but that little asshole had gotten on my last nerve. I charged into the kitchen knowing it would be a mess, and Chico didn't disappoint. Anything he could have gotten into, he'd gotten into. There was food everywhere, and he was sitting on the counter gnawing on something. My goal was to catch him and lock him in his cage till Sam got back. That turned out to be a little more complicated than I thought it would be. Chico hissed and jumped down when I took steps towards him. After that, the chase was on. As crazy as it sounds, chasing that oversized rat around the house took my mind off the insanity outside. 1 hour and 15 bandages later, Chico was in his cage and I was exhausted. Flopping down on the couch, I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to clear my mind. I don't know how it happened, but somehow I fell asleep. I dreamt of a bright sunny day. I could feel the warmth on my skin and hear birds chirping in the trees. It seemed so real. The sound of someone calling my name, grabbing my attention. When I turned to see who it was, I woke up to the sound of someone banging on the door. In my confusion, I hadn't realised the sun was up. Without thinking, I got up to answer it. It was Sam. It's about time. I've been calling you for the last few minutes. What are you doing? I didn't respond. Instead, I stepped past him and stared at the area of the street where I'd seen the creature. There was no sign that anything had happened. Turning my attention back to him, I pointed to the area and asked him if he'd seen anything. Giving me an odd look, he shook his head and took his bags inside. I expected him to start yelling when he saw the mess Chico made, but nothing happened. When I got inside, I noticed everything was back to normal. Sam called out from his room. "Thanks for looking after Chico. Did you feed him?" I was still pissed about him leaving that little demon out, so I yelled back to him, "Hell no, he fed himself." Confused by my response, he came in with Chico on his shoulder. "What are you talking about? He was in his cage when I left. Why would I leave him out?" At that moment I realised something. He wasn't due back for days. It'd only been a few hours. Shaking my head, I looked at the two of them standing in the doorway. "I thought you were supposed to be gone for a while. What happened?" He laughed and walked into the kitchen. "Bro, you really need to see a doctor about that shit. I've been gone for a week. I lost an entire week in one night." I couldn't wrap my mind around it. This couldn't be happening. There was no way I'd missed that much time. Panicking, I ran down to the basement and locked myself in. The first thing I did was look for my phone, but I couldn't find it. When I was sure it wasn't in the basement, I went to check the rest of the house. The second I opened the door, something felt off. The house was quiet. Sam's a noisy person. When he's around, there's almost always something going on. Thinking maybe he'd been tired out, I figured he'd gone to sleep. Doing my best to keep the noise down, I searched everywhere. I could remember at one point I'd chased Chico into the garage. That's where he ambushed me. Now I know how that sounds, but Chico's smart. I don't mean smart for an animal, I mean smart as in this fucker can operate household appliances. He baited me into the garage by turning on the dryer. When I went to check it out, he locked me in. Getting the door open wasn't hard, but that's not the point. Before I caught him, I was bitten, scratched, peed on, and hit with a bowling ball. I mention all of that because, as I was standing there, I caught a glimpse of something moving. Slowly turning to get a better look, I spot Chico staring at me from the top of the bookshelf. "Hey Sam, could you come get this thing before I shove his ass in the microwave?" There was no reply. I called out again, then went to his room and knocked on the door. When he didn't say anything, I opened it and found the room empty. Had I imagined him coming home, or had I missed him leaving while I was in the basement? Scratching my head, I glanced around the room, then turned to look up the hallway after hearing glass break. I wasn't in the mood to deal with that rat again. At this point the odds were it wouldn't do any good anyway. Defeated, I put my head down and went back to the basement. As I passed through the living room, the television flickered to life, and I just about jumped out of my skin. What the fuck? Who's in here? Sam? Chico, is that you? For a split second I actually expected the damn thing to answer me. The sad part is, I probably would have accepted that better than what happened next. As that stupid freaking commercial plastered itself across the screen, I heard the sound of someone rushing up behind me. I spun around, not knowing what or who I was about to see, and came face to face with what I can only describe as a shadow. An ice-cold shock wave rippled through my body as a distorted voice exploded in my brain. Nisutal. I had no idea what that meant. The walls around me trembled as growling filled the air. I could hear them tearing at the house. It felt like they'd come pouring through the sheetrock. Cracks snaked their way across the floor beneath my feet, realizing an inky black mass of writhing tendrils that webbed their way up the walls, blotted out all light, till there was just the screen. I turned and ran for the door, only to be snatched off by my feet and dragged back into the darkness. Those snake-like creatures held me in place with an unbreakable grip, forcing me to face the screen. Clamping my eyes shut, I refused to look, but they wouldn't allow it. They pried my eyes open in time to see Chico waddle in place in front of the screen and plop down before opening his mouth wider than I thought possible. He released a shrill, high-pitched whine that made my nose bleed and my ears ache. It got louder and louder till I felt like my fillings would explode. And just when I thought I couldn't take another second, a loud banging sound disrupted the process. The darkness slowly faded as light filled the room, and the sound of someone banging on the door became crystal clear. I sat there, frozen, staring at it as if it weren't real. I couldn't move, my entire body was trembling, and whoever was pounding on the door wouldn't stop. It took a lot to get up from my seat. My legs were jelly and my skull felt like someone was driving an ice pick through my eardrum. "Who is it?" I managed to stammer out as I staggered over, trying my best not to fall. When I opened up, I was greeted by an unfamiliar face. She was breathtaking. Even angry, her eyes were as inviting. "If you don't keep it down, I'm calling the cops." I apologized and told her I would as she turned and walked away, standing there partially propped up by the door. I watched her for a moment, more out of curiosity than anything else. I'd been living there for over a year and I'd never seen her before. I wanted to see what house she went into. Glancing back, she noticed I was watching her. I didn't pretend not to, which earned me an odd look and a middle finger. She went into the house next door. For some reason, I couldn't remember who lived there. I chalked it up to having my brain scrambled and went on with my morning. I wasn't staying in that house. It took a few minutes to get myself together and find my keys, then I was out. I didn't have any place in mind, so I walked to the gas station, bought a pack of smokes and a Coke, then went to the park and found a place to relax. Cracking the cap of the ice cold can, I sat back and watched the squirrels for a second. It felt good to be outside, right up until I noticed a bird flying over me. I wouldn't have thought much of it if it wasn't for the fact that the bird wasn't moving. Its wings were stretched out as if it were in flight, but it was hanging there suspended in midair. Nobody seemed to notice it. I watched people pass by and never blinked twice. Since everyone else ignored it, so did I. Lighting a smoke, I got up and walked away. The further I walked, the more I noticed little glitches in the world around me. A plane hovering high above the buildings, a dog in mid-bark, children seemingly frozen while playing on the swings. Was too much to ignore. No matter how strange things were getting, I wasn't going back home. I walked for a while longer, then stopped at a hot dog stand for lunch. 2 chili dogs and a bag of chips cost me more than I'd like, but it was worth it. I sat at the bus stop and ate. As I finished up, a bus rolled by and I caught my reflection in the window. One of those creatures was standing behind me, watching. My instant reaction was to run, but when I glanced back over my shoulder, it was gone. Fighting the urge to freak out, I slowed down and kept moving. I'd walked a block or so before a voice called out from across the street, "Jake, wait up." I turned to see Austin from work flagging me down. I don't know much about the guy, he's new in town. We've only met once. He jogged over, stopping to catch his breath. "Floyd's been trying to find you. Where have you been?" I didn't have an answer for that. Quickly making up a lie, I told him I'd been out of town. I guess he bought it because he told me he'd been covering my shift and Floyd hadn't fired me yet. I was hoping that would be the end of the conversation, but we wound up talking for a while longer before he finally went on his way. The sun was setting on another day. As much as I didn't want to go home, I was running out of options. The walk there was nerve-rattling. I kept trying to think of somewhere to go, but if you haven't noticed, I don't have a lot of friends. It wasn't long before I was standing in the street in front of my house. I was a second away from deciding to sleep in the backyard when I noticed lights flickering from inside. My first thought was it had to be Sam. Maybe I wasn't going crazy after all. A little excited, I rushed inside to find the place empty and the television in the living room on. The house was filthy. Everything was back to how I remembered it being. The moment the door closed, I got a sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach. I called out to Sam, hoping he'd answer. Unfortunately, he didn't. I rushed down to the basement and grabbed a few things with the intention of getting out of there. I'd spend the night in a motel if I had to, but I wasn't staying there. Tossing a few things in a trash bag, I rushed back upstairs and out the front door. The moment my feet hit the sidewalk, I tripped over something and fell. I didn't hit the ground. Instead, I tumbled downward, coming to a stop at the bottom of a flight of stairs. It took a second to gather myself and realise I was back in the basement. That's when the pain kicked in. I'd hurt myself during the fall. No bones were broken, but I was banged up pretty bad. I lay there for a long minute, telling myself this wasn't real, till I heard a low rumbling growl coming from my left. Slowly shifting my eyes toward the sound, I saw its shape lumbering near the couch. It was one of those creatures Ignoring the pain, I got up as quickly as I could and tried to get out of the basement. I could hear it closing in on me as I got to the top of the stairs. Reaching out for the knob, I glanced over my shoulder and saw it staring at me and breathing heavily. It didn't budge. Instead, it sat completely still, only moving when I did. When I raised a hand, it took a step. When I put my hand down, it sat back in place. Its eyes were locked on me, anticipating my next move. This was the first time I'd gotten a clean look at one of them. Its skin was a dull black that seemed to absorb light. Its living mane of tendrils looked more like eels, each hissing as they whipped around. The creature's lower jaw protruded, revealing massive jagged teeth, as a steady stream of drool dripped from its jowls, leaving steaming pools on the floor. Petrified, I took a step back and nearly lost my footing on the next step. The creature noticed and lunged towards me. It was now or never. Without thinking, I spun around, flinging the door open and took off running. I raced through the house and out the front door. As soon as I was outside, the sunlight stopped me in my tracks. I could have sworn it was night. The sudden change was confusing. All I could do was stand there in the middle of the yard, staring up at the sky, completely ignoring the creatures coming after me. The sound of someone yelling, "That's it, I'm calling the cops," snapped me out of it as I turned to see the lady from next door. She stood in her doorway with her phone pressed against her ear while glaring at me. I quickly rushed towards her and stopped before I stepped onto her driveway. "Get inside, it's coming," I shouted while motioning for her to get back, but she didn't listen. I could hear that thing tearing through the house. It would be there any second. I couldn't wait. Taking a deep breath, I ran towards her. She instantly stepped back, attempting to close the door before I could get to her, but she wasn't fast enough. I managed to get my foot in the door before it slammed shut and forcing my way inside. I was so focused on the creature, I hadn't paid any attention to where she had gone. The next thing I know, something heavy came down on the back of my head and everything went black. When I came to, I was in handcuffs and the police were carrying me to their squad car. Jail was just the tip of the iceberg, thanks to my insane story. I was placed on psychiatric hold and taken to the hospital for evaluation. I told them everything, which in hindsight was a huge mistake. I was admitted and spent the next 72 hours trying to convince them I wasn't crazy. It didn't work. The only upside was I hadn't seen anything since getting to the hospital. I was starting to think I'd imagined it all. 3 days after being officially admitted, that changed. I was laying in my bed, staring at the ceiling, when my stomach started hurting. It wasn't a normal ache. It felt like something was trying to tear its way out of my gut. The pain intensified with every passing moment till it became unbearable. Doing my best not to scream, I grunted through it and rolled to my back while pulling up my shirt so I could see my stomach. My skin was discoloured and pale with dark veins spreading across it. I watched in a combination of horror and disbelief as my belly distended, swelling and stretching before the skin split, releasing a wave of foul-smelling liquid. I couldn't hold it any longer. I screamed at the top of my lungs, but no one came to help. Slimy black tendrils lashed out, gripping the bed rails as something began pulling its way out of my gaping hole in the centre of my body. Shockwaves rolled through me as a black figure emerged, dipping blood and viscous fluid from its frame. I gasped and gargled out a raspy, "Fuck, it was you," just before my eyes rolled back in their sockets and the world around me slowly faded away. There was a moment of absolute stillness. A peaceful black void cradled me, taking everything away, and for a time I finally felt at peace. Flashes illuminated the darkness as a lightning crackled and spread through the air. With every flash I started seeing shapes. It only took a second to recognize them as the creatures. There had to be thousands of them, stretching out as far as I could see. They writhed and snarled as if they somehow knew I was awake. Countless pairs of eyes locked onto me, glowing yellow orbs floating in the inky black sea, awaiting my next move. A new sensation flooded through my system, a bittersweet combination of exhaustion and anger replaced the fear, and I exploded. Barking into the darkness, I dared the horde to take me, and when they didn't move, I charged in. My hands became weapons. I tore the first one to pieces, bathing in its blood, enjoying its agony as the others finally came to life. A second one jumped on my back. For some reason, they were smaller than I remembered them being. Its tendrils lashed around me, tearing at my skin. But I wouldn't stop. I couldn't stop. It snarled and screeched as we tumbled backwards, slamming into something I couldn't see. The impact broke its hold and gave me a chance to turn around and face my next target. I ripped out its teeth and gouged out its eyes before digging them through its chest and eating its heart. The taste made my blood feel like lava in my veins. Before I knew what I was doing, I felt my body moving. I was running full speed till I slammed through another invisible wall, this time confronting 4 of those things. The first one was bigger than the others. It let out a roar and attacked. It slammed into me like a linebacker, ragdolling me for a moment before I got to its throat, sinking my fingers into its flesh. I tore away fistfuls till its snarling became a gurgling and it stopped moving. There was a flash of light and something hit me. The side of my body went cold for a moment when I saw the others. One of them charged at me while the other 2 ran away. I couldn't believe it. They were running from me. The thought of it gave me a rush. I made quick work of the one in front of me, disemboweling it, before running after the other 2. They hadn't gone far. I caught up to them with ease and shoved the closest one, causing it to fall, accidentally tripping the other. I drove my hands down to its throat and ripped out its tongue. Then I set my sights on the last one. It was the smallest of the 4. It snarled and scrambled to get away, but I wasn't going to let that happen. I stomped on its legs as it tried to move, and it howled when the bone snapped. I took my time breaking its limbs and pulling off its tendrils, one handful at a time, and when I was done, I hoisted its drooling, hideous frame over my head, then slammed it down into the darkness at my feet. As its lifeless body vanished, the horde finally swarmed me. I didn't go down without a fight, but it was pointless. They flooded in, and as the last glimmer of light faded, A sound drowned out their growling. A faint voice floated in from somewhere in the distance. "We're sorry. Your call could not be completed." As dialed. "Please check the number and try again." As the chime sounded and the message repeated, the void swirled around me, shifting back to reality. I was sitting in the basement, clutching my phone and covered in blood. The overwhelming stench of scorched fur and rotting flesh hung heavy in the air, almost gagging me, as the sound of sirens echoed in the distance. Making my way upstairs, I found what was left of Chico in the microwave and Sam's decomposing corpse lying in the middle of the living room. My mind was racing, my heart was pounding, and the left side of my body was numb. I glanced down, discovering I'd been shot. I staggered out of the house as the police arrived. They took me into custody. In total, I murdered 7 people and a possum. Sam was first, followed by Garrett Vickers and his daughter, who was in town visiting. Next was the Winston family. I broke into their home and murdered the father before being shot by their son. I then proceeded to gut the boy before chasing the mother and the youngest child down and butchering them in the middle of the street. It didn't take much for them to classify me as insane and locked me away for the rest of my natural life. On the upside, things are a lot better now. I still don't sleep much, but at least no one's getting hurt. On the downside, I still have no idea what those things were, and nobody believes me, but that's going to change soon. I saw that commercial last night. This time I'm ready. This time I'll kill them all. I know why Chucky E Cheese closed down. Posted by Dependent Ad 87493. I would like to point out that I'm not crazy at all. This was true. If you don't know what I'm talking about, let me tell my story. I was tight on money when my mother died. She left me $50. I know, not that much. I heard that Chucky E Cheese was now hiring, so that was my chance. I went over there and met the manager. He was a little grumpy, but I didn't let that bother me. He said I can start at 12 AM, and so I did. Night 1. I was almost late, but made it on time. The manager was there. "Hey, do you know that one place that closed down because of some attempted murder to an employee? Freddy's Winter Pizza." "Yeah, what about it?" "Well, these animatronics share the same technology as Freddy's Winter Pizza." "Oh, okay then." He gave me the keys and I head inside and checked out the place, just like how I remembered. An arcade section, dining area, and the main stage where Chucky E Cheese, Helen Henny, Jasper T. Jowls, Mr. Munch, and Pasquale were all there talking. I sighed in a nostalgic emotion. Then Pasquale noticed me and said, "Ah, welcome to Chucky E Cheese." I'm a Pasquale. I was smiling like a 10-year-old would. It's so nice to meet you. I met the other bandmates and I saved Chucky for last. Hey, Chucky. Oh, why hey there, new employee. How are you doing? I'm doing great. Hey, all of you, mostly you, Chucky, were my childhood. If you guys go out of business one day, I would be sad, but still love you guys with the passion of my heart. Ah, that's the nicest thing anyone has ever said to us. He hugged me and I hugged him back. Alrighty, while you guys hug it out, I'm gonna play some horror games, Pasquale said. Wait, Pasquale, you're a gamer now? Yeah. I do it when the day's over and when we're closed for a few days. Oh, okay. Then he walked away. Okay, if you guys need anything, I'll be back in my office. Okay, new employee. Then I went to my office. A few hours go by and Pasquale walks into the office and says, Hey, new employee, can you give me a horror game request? Can be anything. I requested the first game that appeared on top of my head. Maybe Doki Doki Literature Club. Oh, I heard about that game. The disguised dating sim, but actually a horror game. Yeah, I played it a couple of times and it's a very good game. Okay, I'll go play it. Then he walked to his gaming room, I assume. But just 2 minutes later, this guy with a school uniform came into my office and got his face close to me. You need something? No response. Then he walked off. The fuck was that? The night went on like any other. Night 2. I went back into Chucky E Cheese and my manager was there and said, So, should I start playing Doki Doki Literature Club? Sounds like an interesting game. Huh? Sure, okay. Then he got into his car and drove off. Why is everyone so interested to a horror visual novel game? I head inside and the first thing I see is that Mr. Munch and Helen Henny were missing and Pasquale was shaking. He was also curled up into a ball. Pasquale, what's the matter? I should have saved her. I should have stopped her from doing that. Stopped what from doing? Sayori, man. She did the commit not living move. Oh, she did that. I know, kind of traumatizing moment, but you'll get over it. Where is Mr. Munch and Helen? You're probably gonna think I'm crazy, but I think Monica took them and destroyed them. You're silly. Monica isn't real. As I said that, the lights go out. Chucky, was that you? The lights came back on and Pasquale was decapitated. Holy shit! I screamed. Then I heard someone saying, Happy thoughts, happy thoughts, happy thoughts, happy thoughts. I ran to the office and closed the door before a demonic version of Sayori can come into the office. What do you want from me? Then she walked off. A few hours later I heard, Do you accept my confession? That was Yuri. No. Then I heard manically laughing, then running noises. I closed the door before she could get in. And oh my god, she looked demented as hell. She already had her knife in her heart, her face similar to a trolled monster. Then she was talking glitchy gibberish. Then thankfully the night ended and went home. Final night. I went back to that place and my manager was there, scared. What's the matter? I was talking like I didn't know what happened, but I knew what happened. This is your last night. What? Why? Well, I found all the animatronics dismantled and broken, and we're going bankrupt, and there were murders here. So for your own survival, make it through one last night. Okay. I went inside and it was empty. I went to the office and sat in the chair. 20 minutes later, I heard, "Play with me, Baka." Then I heard running from the left door. I hurried to close it, and I saw Natsuki. Her neck was snapped already. She walked off, and I thought to myself, so I saw Sayori in a demented form, trolled Yuri, and neck snapped Natsuki. Who's next? My heart drops. Monica. As I thought that, I heard her familiar laugh. Well, you finally figured it out, huh? She was at the left hallway. Huh, you can't get me in here. Oh yes, I can. Then she phased through the door, and I opened the right one and ran out to the main lobby, out the main door, into my car, and drove away. I think I know why Chucky E Cheese went bankrupt. Because of her, she causes everything. She's the reason Chucky E Cheese closed down. So listen, please, don't encounter a woman with a bow hair tie. And that's it for tonight, my little hellhounds. Thanks for listening. If you have any scary stories you want narrated on the channel, then submit them to Reddit r/homeofscares, and follow me on Twitter at homeofscares. Also, if you like this content and these scary stories and you want more, then don't forget to subscribe and click the like button and tickle that bell icon so you get notified every time I upload. Now, good night, my little hellhounds.